Okay, this lesson will focus on solving problems that might have imaginary solutions to them. In the past, you've always been told to write that there are no real answers to this problem, but now we're going to give our answers with imaginary numbers in them. Okay, so we'll start off with just this basic problem here. You're going to solve it just like you would um, normally. Okay, so I will go ahead and subtract 48. And that leaves me with 3x squared equals negative 48. And of course, the next logical step would be to isolate the x by dividing by 3. So I have x squared equals negative 16. And now you can't have it solved for x squared, you have to have it solved for x. And so you need to square root that. And whenever you square root something that's been squared, you need to put that plus or minus in it because, like, if I wanted to do, let's say, the square root of 16, I know that 4 squared can make 16, but I also know that negative 4 squared, negative 4 times negative 4 also makes 16. And so that's why you have to do the plus and minus in front of it. And so what I have is x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 16. When I have a negative underneath that radical in here, there's where the I comes in. And then we know that the square root of 16 is 4. So my answer to this would be 4i. Obviously the square root of 16 is 4, but then the square root of this negative 1 right here would have to be an I. Okay, so that is that one. We'll do another one here. I will add 84 to both sides. So I have negative 2x squared equals 16 plus 84, which is 100. And then I will divide by negative 2. So I have x squared equals negative 50. And again, I don't want that solved for x squared. I want it solved for x. So I would need to square root both sides. And when you square root both sides, don't forget that you need that positive or negative in there. People get points off on tests all the time because of that. So this is positive or negative, square root of negative 50. All right, the negative right here means that I need an I. Okay, so I'll pluck out that I just as it is. And then the square root of 50, you can do that a couple of different ways, but you might want to think about that as the square root of 25 times the square root of 5. And the square root of 25 we know is 5. So this becomes 5i root 5. If you want to break that 50 down and do it this way instead, 2 times 25 and then 5 times 5, and here's your prime factors. And obviously you have to have pairs to leave the house, so I have a pair of 5s that gets to leave the house, and you can do it that way as well. All right, so there's that one. We are actually going to skip number 3. If you would like to try it on your own, I will tell you that your answer is going to be plus or minus 2i root 2. All right, we're going to go on to, actually we're going to skip number 4 too. I'll tell you your answer to that would be plus or minus 1/4 I. We'll do one real similar to it right here. All right, this one looks like it's just the same, and it is pretty much just the same. It's just that the answers come out to be fractions instead. So I will subtract 16 from both sides so that I have 9x squared equals negative 16. And then I will divide by 9. So I have x squared equals negative 16 ninths. And then you're going to go, oh my gosh, I must have done it wrong because I have a fraction. Don't freak out about fractions. It might happen, just so you know. All right, and again, to solve this, you're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget that you have to have the plus or minus in front of it. And I have a negative sign right here, okay? So what I know that I need is I know I need the plus or minus. I know I have to have an I because I have a negative underneath the radical. And then this is really the square root of 16, I'm going to do this, plus or minus I, times the square root of 16 over the square root of 9. When you have the square root of a fraction, you can think about doing the top and the bottom separately. So the square root of 16 would be 4, and the square root of 9 would be 3, and I will put that whole number in front of the I, not behind it, okay? So that's my answer to this problem. And then we're going to skip number 6 also. I will tell you that you get plus or minus 5/8 I if you want to try it. All right, and then number 7 is just slightly different here. Notice that I have a quantity that's been squared this time. And so what I need to do is I need to square root both sides right from the get-go so that I can get rid of this square. The square and the square root will cancel each other out. So then I will have 7x minus 2 equals the square root of negative 66. And again, when you're square rooting something that's been squared, you do need the plus or minus in front of it. So don't forget to do that. And then plus or minus would be, and I have this negative in front of here, sorry. And then, so the square root of negative 1 would be I. So right now what I have is plus or minus I times root 66. Root 66, if you try to break that down, there's not a perfect square that goes into 66. And if you don't know that, you can also prime factor it and be 6 times 11 and 2 times 3. So there's no pairs of anything that can leave the house. So there's nothing you can do there. All right. So that means that I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Okay. And I can't combine a whole number of 2 with a radical or an imaginary number. So I will just rewrite that as positive 2 plus or minus I root 66. Okay. And then I need to, I shouldn't have drawn that yet. And then I need to solve for x by dividing both sides by 7. And I will divide that whole side by 7. That cancels out. And then what I have is 2 plus or minus I root 66 over 7. Okay? Now, a couple of things that I want to tell you about. Some people think you can reduce this because 2, 66, and 7, well, actually not 7, you can't reduce this, but some people would think you could, like, let's say if there was an 8 in the denominator, some people would think you could reduce it, but 66 is underneath the radical, and so you can't do anything with that underneath the radical, just so you know. So this is all that I can really do. Accelerated math might write this a couple of different ways. I'm okay if you leave it like this. Accelerated math might do this because really there's 2 answers here. One of the answers is 2 plus I root 66 all over 7. And then the other answer is 2 minus I root 66 all over 7. So they might have it written separately like that. Or the other thing they might do is they might split this fraction up. So they might go, okay, I have 2/7 here, and then do plus or minus I root 66 over 7 and rewrite that fraction. They might do that. Or the other thing they might do is they might write the answer like this. Technically, I can put this all in one big thing with a 1 in front of it. Okay, so they might write it as 1/7 times 2 plus or minus I root 66. Okay, so just so you know, accelerated math might write it a whole bunch of different ways, and you just need to know that it all means the same answer. And I don't want you to think that you did get it wrong just because your answer doesn't look exactly like theirs. So think about other ways that they might write it and make sure that you have that answer that could just be transformed into that other form. Okay?